Now, building out mobile commerce. The world changed 2 years ago, as far as I'm concerned. I've been writing about online retailing since 1999. So, I can kind of talk about the first 10, 15 years, and then the model changed. Okay, why is the model changed, and how did it change? Well, if you want ancient history, the first generation of e-commerce was the Amazons of the world. It was PC driven. It was driven to my catalog. My site taxonomy is structured in a way that benefits me, doesn't benefit you, but I control the experience. You come here, here's my shopping cart. So the first 10, 15 years of online retailing was built by that particular model. In fact, there are some hardcore traditionalists, mostly chain retailers, that still think of it in that model. If you think of a company who is probably not going to be around for the foreseeable future that still clings to that model, think of JCPenney. JCPenney, a very large, mostly women's apparel chain. Technically, they're mass merchant in the United States, but JCPenney, had this huge cataloging business. They converted it to kind of a PC infrastructure early on, and we used to write about how big and how bad online retailing sales were growing, if you will, for JCPenney. Now, JCPenney has lost a third of its online business. They just simply can't change fast enough with the times, and they missed some key opportunities. My point there is they took too long to cling to the first generation of e-commerce, which was PC-driven, and I control the experience. My customer comes to my site. Yes, my analytics dictate where that retailer is, where that customer is going, but I structure this. I control this. I will tell the customer, and I'll give them some feedback, tell them where to go, how to shop, and then, at the end of the day, I've got your business. What has changed, though, is it's not just mobile growing exponentially, if you will, in countries like the United States, where it's taking off. What's happening is in markets like Brazil, and I'll bet you if I came back here in maybe 3 or 4 years' time, I would be looking at a similar experience. Brazil, not unlike India, a burgeoning middle class, more smartphones getting into consumers' hands, more populace looking to do all kinds of things with their smartphone. In Brazil, 5 years ago, there was nothing in the way of a truly established, traditional information technology, telecommunications infrastructure. Brazil said, forget all that. What they did is they went strictly for mobile. They built up a mobile infrastructure over the course of 5 years as their economy was growing at, say, 8, 9, 10% a year, as they became to grow into the world's 7th largest economy, I believe. And along with that rise in mobile commerce, or if you will, mobile technology and the infrastructure for that, came this entire growth of online retailers that are suddenly in business. And next thing you know, there's a company like a Netshoes.com. And if you want to take a look at a good website and a good model to study, I would look at netshoes.br, because that will give you a very good example of how an online retailer is putting together a successful shopping experience across mobile, across tablet, across PC in an emerging market like a Brazil. So not everything would be applicable to India, but one of the things that Netshoes did early on was they realized they had to go out and capture the mobile shopper. So mobile commerce, I would argue, is certainly age-driven. Pretty much doesn't matter what continent you're on. You're going to have a whole generation coming your way that they don't phone, they text. They don't email, they text. They don't speak on the phone, they live on social media. So if you're looking to see, one of the two game changers between now and going forward is the entire rise of first mobile commerce and now social marketing and social commerce has changed the entire dynamic of online retailing. it does not matter what the market is, the entire dynamics have changed. The experience has gone from I, the retailer, control the experience to I, the customer, control the experience. And so we do a lot of writing about retailers across a lot of walks of life, across a lot of market sizes, that what they're doing very well is they're understanding that the new world order of online retailing is driven most effectively by those retailers who understand my customers control the experience. And what I build suits them, does not suit me. So what do some of the online players globally have in common? Well, they're going global, I mentioned that. They are building out mobile commerce. And next, we'll talk about social media marketing and commerce in just a bit here, but another trait that truly best practice online retailers, no matter the market, are doing is they're really beginning to figure out more of what social media is, and more importantly, how they can leverage that across a variety of fronts for their customers. In other words, it's not just a Facebook page. They're figuring out every tool that Facebook has in the toolbox, and they're figuring out a way to connect with those tools with their customer. You know, those companies have that in common. And, you know, most importantly, they are looking for opportunity, and they are looking for partners. You know, we put on a very large online retailing show ourselves. It's called we call it IRCE. And next June in Chicago, we're going to welcome 10,000 visitors from 35 countries to come here. 222 speakers talk about various things with online retailing. And we actually have a track called Amazon and Me. And I bring up that example because we get calls every day at Internet Retailer, which is, how can I compete against Amazon? How do I compete against these big established companies? I just see where, you know, where company A merged with company B, and how do I compete with that? Well, you know, maybe it's the help desk. Maybe I'm Ann Landers. Maybe I'm Dear Abby. I don't know. But, you know, we get calls like that quite a bit. And the first thing we mention is, well, relax. You're not going to compete with Amazon. Maybe here you are. It's still an emerging market. Oddly enough, if you look at, you know, who the top 5 players in Latin America e-commerce are, number 1 is not Amazon. Number 5 is Amazon. Amazon just launched their Kindle and some digital product for Brazil. They are not moving into Brazil just yet. That's the one market they're being a little more cautious. But if you look at, you know, the more consolidated and mature parts of e-commerce, Amazon has long since been number 1 online retail U.S., will continue to be. In fact, our CEO, Jack Love, who just loves these numbers, he did a forecast where he's got, if you look at, you know, both Amazon and Walmart stores are publicly traded companies in the U.S., and he looked at 15 years of financial data for Walmart, and then 15 years of financial data for Amazon.com, and he projected ahead for, you know, 10 years based upon past financial history. And guess who we figure is going to be the largest retailer in the world in 10 years? And I'll give you a clue. It's not Walmart. It's Amazon. So that is just the power of what Amazon's doing. So my point to a lot of people who call is, I say, relax. You're not going to beat them. But what can you do? We do a summer publication we call the Second 500. And I love that publication because what we do is we talk to who we think are the up-and-comers or the best niche merchants, folks not unlike yourself if you're a smaller, kind of newer company in the U.S., and we rank them on their sales. But more importantly, we try and tell their story of what makes them different and why they are kind of an emerging leader. And it comes down to they look for opportunity within their niche. They look for partners who understand their niche, be it technology, be it financial, be it marketing. They look for partners that are going to help them grow that. And, you know, there are a lot of niche retailers, even in these old consolidating mature markets, they're doing quite fine because they have the product expertise, they have the product knowledge, and they've built their entire e-commerce experience around, you know, their knowledge of their product and their customer. And, you know, in the new world order of mobile and social, they figured out how to bring their expertise to the next generation who wants to shop how they want, when they want, and they're not just going to be at the office or at home on their PC. So these are 3, 4, 5 things that I think kind of defy markets, if you were. So if you're looking for somewhat general ways to differentiate but still be there, for the long run, I'd say those are 4 or 5 of the good ones. Now, where is mobile commerce headed? So, it's I don't study mobile as well in Europe or in Latin America, and certainly not Asia as I do in the US. But if you look at the fact that online sales for our Mobile 400 are up 98.6% to about 20.6 billion. Now that's a little misleading because half of that is eBay. And eBay has made it very clear that when it comes to mobile commerce, we want to be the Amazon. And arguably, when they're growing at, when they're putting up 10, 11 billion a year in mobile commerce, it's kind of hard to talk about. So to put some things into perspective, in the US, mobile is now 9.2% of all US e-commerce sales, a little bit less, if you will, for Europe. Certainly somewhat higher than 9.2% for emerging markets like Brazil, where it's all mobile driven. So my point in bringing up that fact is that my last point here when it comes to mobile commerce, and why am I bringing this up here? Because part of what is going to help you excel, whether your market is India or China, the US or Europe, it does not matter. What's going to help you excel is that, we see the US market and what's happening with mobile as being a harbinger for how mobile commerce and the expectation consumers in various markets have for mobile commerce as a harbinger of things to come. I mean, to put that 9.2% of total U.S. e-commerce into perspective, we have only been charting mobile sales for the better part of 3 years. I mean, just 3 years ago, less than 1%. So in less than 3 years' time, in our core market of the U.S., you can see, what effect mobile commerce begins to have on those kinds of numbers. And, $21 billion across a market is not exactly just a small change, as it were. That's a very significant indicator, I think, of one of the prime directives, if you will, of e-commerce today, which is the model, once again, is not you come to my site, I control the experience. The experience has left you. Your customer controls that. And if you use mobile and understand mobile as a way to kind of figure out as part of your business model, I think that's where one of the reasons you come ahead. So I had a couple of mobile questions coming into the show here today. So what do mobile commerce leaders have in common? And once again, I can be somewhat ubiquitous across the 4 or 5 markets that we study. For 2 things, they have a dual strategy, and you may not have it yet, but you're going to have it, which is you've got kind of a dual strategy for smartphone, and you've got it for tablets. And it's a somewhat different audience in the US. The tablets, a year ago, just a year ago, when we did our first ranking of the biggest mobile players in the US, tablets were not part of the discussion. Just like 2 years prior to that, smartphones were not prior to the discussion. Mobile was not happening. In 2 years' time, along comes the smartphone. A year later, along comes the tablet. And it's exciting to talk with retailers, especially, let's say, in Europe and the US, because if you ask them, okay, do you guys have a tablet strategy? How's your tablet business doing? Boy, they love to talk about that. Why do they love to talk about it? Because even if they don't have a mobile site, mobile apps, tablet apps, what they've been finding is that 10%, 12%, 15% of their total traffic now comes from some type of mobile device, and maybe half that, 7, 8% of total traffic now to a site suddenly comes from tablet. What's exciting there? These 2 technologies did not exist 3 years ago. That's how fast mobile is rapidly changing. And so if you kind of look at what the retailing leaders of mobile kind of have in common, it boils down to a kind of a 4 or 5 here. They understand smartphones and they understand tablet strategies. So analytics has a huge role to play in both of those. you know, we talk with, we've got 2 reporters who do nothing but cover mobile commerce every single day. And, you know, if you look for some commonalities of what they have in the stories that they produce about, you know, so-and-so is doing this well, this retailer has this aspect of mobile doing well, you know, you kind of get around to asking, okay, well then what's driving this? And 9 times out of 10, they're going to come back and they're going to say, well, we did this with our technology. We did this with our app. We did this with our user experience because we looked at the analytical data per device and per operating system. And we understood, and we know, and we track, and we care, and we change how our iPhone shoppers come to us, how our tablet shoppers come to us, you know, how the Android folks come to us. So my point is, one best practice is a lot of retailers that are doing exceptionally well with mobile are extremely attentive to, you know, really looking at the historical trends from what their analytics report shows them. And that can tell you a lot of interesting data that I can tell you for a fact has driven a lot of growth to very forward-thinking online retailers. So, and then a couple of other things that are just somewhat basic retailing. You know, a lot of retailers in the US and Europe that are doing pretty well with mobile, they'll tell you, you got to keep that guy coming back, daily deals, some type of incentive, something that's going to offer them the way to keep that guy coming back. Another thing, fast search. 4th thing, ease of use. When e-commerce began coming of age 2 years ago, a lot of retailers that we used to write about kind of went crazy. They began to basically replicate every single thing on their traditional e-commerce site into their mobile site, thinking that the customer has to have the exact same user experience, you know, on my traditional site, my mobile site. So that thinking is kind of changing because what they really want is ease of use. What they want is a daily deal. What they want is fast search. What they want is apps that are adaptable to them. First generation apps were pretty much how retailers thought of the we control the experience type of thing. They may have launched a commerce-enabled app, but it mirrored how they thought shoppers were shopping their traditional e-commerce site. Not the case. Apps, you know, app technology is not nearly as expensive today as it was, say, just 2-3 years ago. So a lot of people are spending a lot of time, you know, coming up with new and now better versions of the apps, and they're letting their customers know about it. But more importantly, once again, they're studying the app behavior between the tablet user and the smartphone user and tailoring the experience to those particular people. Okay. Oops. Social media, a couple of quick stats. You know, we literally just ranked the largest social media players for the very first time. In fact, our publication came out not more than 2 weeks ago. Kind of fascinating. And what we found is we looked at kind of the 300 biggest social media brands, retailers, if you will, in the US, and we ranked them on percent of traffic that comes to their site, you know, from, at least in the US, kind of the three major players, Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. And what's significant about that 4.25% is that that's total traffic. That was traffic that was not coming from these sources a year ago. So that shows you that 4.25%. Bet you I'm back here next year or in previous years telling you it's 10, 11, 12, 13, 14%. That's how fast a game changer, you know, these Facebook channels and Twitter outlets and whatnot are becoming for what's driving traffic to your site. And I think social media will evolve differently in different markets. But you know what? This is how people communicate today, younger generation. It's going to be ubiquitous. So understand how your traffic is coming from social, your game ahead. Now, a stat. We added up the entire social media 300 and we came up with 1.6 billion in total sales. To put that into perspective, that is only 1% of total US e-commerce sales for last year. Paltry. Yeah, I know. But if you talk with a jackthreads.com, if you talk with a petflow.com, if you talk with some of these retailers that have really taken the time and trouble to understand how to use Facebook and Twitter in ways that put them ahead of the competition, but more importantly, they understand how their customers are using this, they will tell you that That 1.6 billion in collective sales represents the sales I am getting from my best, most engaged customers. And there is a company called Coastal Contacts. They operate a website called coastal.com. They sell contact lenses, they sell eyeglasses. And they are one of the companies that did about $30 million in online retailing sales from social last year. So the 30 million, you know, the CEO likes that number. That's not what excites him. Over the course of 2 Facebook campaigns, he will tell you that they gained 1 million new customers. 2 campaigns. You can take 10 years of paid search, 10 years of email marketing, 10 years of affiliate marketing, and you are not going to have that kind of metric that gets you 1 million customers over the course of 2 campaigns. Now, I could go into some detail about how they achieved that 1 million. I'm happy to kind of tell you that tale when I'm through here, but in short order, what they did is they began to understand to use Facebook promotional tools in ways that they were kind of the case study for Facebook on a couple of things. So they really got into, you know, understanding how their customers were using Facebook and learned all kinds of valuable lessons and became students of the channel. And that's what they're going to tell you where the sales came from. Okay, so just a couple of quick things on what do the world's best retailers have in common for any type of social network. Well, first off, they use Facebook or the equivalent to engage their best customers. These are the people who are excited about your brand. They just bought something. They found something. They want to refer it. So you figure out, like a Coastal Contacts did, that we can use these tools to reach our best customers, and that's something a lot of traditional chain retailers in Europe and the US still do not understand. Secondly, Twitter, frankly, is the new face of customer service. Don't hide behind it. You know, if somebody has a Twitter feed, if somebody Twitters and says, I had a bad experience, or, you know, I did not receive my order the day you promised, well, Twitter is becoming the new customer service tool that puts online retailers in, yes, the light of your customers, but it also showcases you as to having a best-in-class, first-class customer service tool. And I can tell you that retailers that are truly understanding Twitter as a customer service tool and not just a way to promote and market to their customers are coming out leaders in social commerce. Frankly, lastly, social media, social commerce, it is offense, not defense. Chain retailers, a lot of big chain retailers in the States, yeah, they're on Facebook. Yeah, they've got 5 employees doing Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, all that, but they think about it from, I control the brand. I control the experience. I'm trying to control my name and how customers out there are reacting to me. Well, that's very conventional thinking for a very new and unconventional medium. So the leaders in social media and social commerce aren't being defensive, they're being offensive. They're getting like these niche retailers I just spoke about because they're understanding that social media is the new way people communicate. They understand that social media is word-of-mouth advertising on an instant global scale nothing else is going to reach, and they are figuring out ways to reach who they think are their most engaged customers. Okay, so that brings me to my conclusion. I once again am truly excited to have been here today. I hope I have had some perspective that you would find useful to your particular business, and I would encourage you, give me a call. My number is there, my email is there. We talk with retailers all day long, happy to hear from you. So we might wind up telling your story in a news story, or more importantly, got a question, got a comment, give us a call and we'll see if we can help you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mark. It was a real honor to have you here and to hear your global perspective, and I'm sure a lot of people here took some key learnings from other big players in the e-tailing industry. So before our networking break, we will have one more keynote speaker, and I'd like to introduce him now. Mr. Mahesh Murthy is the co-founder and partner of Seed Fund, and he will be speaking on the future of e-commerce in India and the key trends and challenges that lie ahead. So a bit about Mr. Murthy. He has over 26 years of marketing experience and communication, of which 15 years was in online marketing. Actually, after dropping out of college, Mahesh sold vacuum cleaners from door to door, worked with Grey in India and Ogilvy, in Hong Kong, where he won notoriety and awards as a creative director on HP, The Economist, Pepsi, and MTV, for whom he wrote and directed a spot that was voted Asia's best commercial of the decade. So an amazing feat. Let's welcome this creative genius to the podium. Please put your hands together for Mr. Mahesh Murthy.
I love this music. It seems like I'm going up at the Oscars or something. Hi. I don't have a deck for you. I thought I'd have a conversation with all of you. Just a little bit about my personal experience with commerce in India and outside. I helped design and launch Amazon globally when I lived in the US, in Seattle, and did quite a few more e-commerce companies in the US. Came back to India 13 odd years ago. Tried to launch an e-commerce company, fund a few of them, failed in the early 2000s. Now run a fund. Some of the companies that we're happy investors in are Redbus, India's largest bus ticketing e-commerce site, and 3 or 4 other e-com companies. In addition, I also help found and fund India's largest independent digital marketing company, which has worked with people like Make My Trip, Jet, Yatra, and so on and so forth. So we have a little bit of experience in terms of numbers, in terms of what's been happening in India these days. Ashish, first of all, a big hand to Ashish and the gang at eTailingIndia for putting this together. I think it's nice and reasonable high time that we had a e-commerce kind of conference of our own. I understand I have about 20 odd minutes or 25 minutes, so I'm going to try to keep them kind of short, anecdotal, and probably leave, I don't know if there's room for questions or not, but I'll certainly leave my email address, phone number, and Twitter ID at the end. The first thing I really wanted to talk about is that unlike the first kind of false coming of e-com in India about 12 years ago, it's here to stay. I mean, the numbers are on our side. We have 150 million internet users in India. We have 64, 65 million people on Facebook alone, 120 million people who visit Google every month. And to put that in perspective, there are only 121 million television sets in India, right? So I just wanted to put that out there in perspective. There are only 7 million, there's only 7 million circulation of the Times of India. So Facebook reaches 9 times as many people as the Times of India, already in India. Right? So the numbers are already well and truly on our side. We still have some gating factors. The biggest gating factor is really in some ways a complex one. And it is simply this, that virtually the entire internet in India is in English. And there are only about 250, 300 million English speakers in India, which means it's going to take some enormous leap of something for us to reach the 1.3 billion, right? Which is also in some ways something that holds us back. Many analysts tend to think of these BRIC economies, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and the US, and say that, well, the US has Google, China has Baidu, India needs a Google. The US has Facebook, China has whatever else it is. US has Twitter, China has Weibo. We need India's, Weibo. We need India's Twitter, and so on and so forth. And the truth of the matter is India's Facebook is Facebook, India's Google is Google, India's Twitter is Twitter, and India's Amazon, I believe, will in large terms be Amazon. And that's largely the challenge. We don't really behave on these large established spaces as an independent economy, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but there are opportunities out there. which also means that if you're trying to be like them and say, well, I'm going to set up India as Google, you're going to have a really hard slog at doing that. What have we learned in the last few years? I've been investing as a formal VC fund for the last 6-7 years right now in India. The first thing I've really learned is that the original theory was that it's a last man standing game. You need to have enough money that you burn everybody else out. Well, we know that's not true anymore. We know that, so for a long time, I think I would imagine without any direct knowledge that Flipkart's strategy was very much a last man standing game. We're going to simply burn and lose enough money till everybody else dies. Guess what? Every year somebody else is born. So, you know, they kind of breathed the sigh when Yebi kind of got out of the way and others got out of the way, and then up came Jabong, and again outspent everybody till briefly it pipped Flipkart 6-7 months ago, and Flipkart had to up its spends. And now they've quietened down, and somebody else will come next year, and somebody else will come next year, and somebody else will come next year. So there's really no deep thought behind this last man standing idea that we need endless sums of money. I think that that's really not what is going to make e-commerce happen in India. It's really not going to be about endless deep pockets. I think that's what we've learned, and that's what many funds have learned. 2, it's not really going to be about bribing the customer. Everybody out there had this entire thing saying, pay 2,000, pay 5,000, get N free. You know, you had so many coupons and price off offers. And what really the customer learned was that there's no reason to be brand loyal to anybody, because everybody is going to undercut everybody else. I keep telling the story of how I bought my phone. I found this on a site advertised. I knew it was selling in the market for 33, and the phone was advertised for 27. I thought it was a pretty good deal. So I bought the phone. Sure enough, it came to me for 27, and inside the packaging from the retailer I had bought it was the box from another e-commerce retailer he had bought it from for 31. So he bought it at 31 and sold it to me at 27. You know, if he thinks he's created loyalty, he's out of his mind. You know, he simply spurred me to figure out that I can pretty much fool these guys all of the time. And I think what I tell friends right now in India is all these guys throwing money, this is a great time not to start an e-commerce company, but to buy from e-commerce companies before they go out of business. Right? This is an excellent time to do that. Right? The third thing I've kind of figured out is it's really not about copy-paste. We talked about that. Standard, you know, Wall Street thinking will have you believe, yeah, you know, US is Google, is search engine is Google, and China's is Baidu. India's, well, there's some foolish guy on Wall Street who said, Rediff is the Google of the Ganges, without knowing what Rediff is or what Google is, what the Ganges is, which is probably the only reason the Rediff stock price is still supported somewhere in the US. The company is not even among the top 10 in terms of traffic in India today. So there's going to be some ability for companies to fool US investors, but very hard for you to fool Indian investors. I think Mr. Patel in Gujarat is going to say, what revenues, where profit, why should I buy this company? I think that's still going to happen for us. The next thing that we've learned is that it's not really going to be about 1,000, 2,000 rupee cost per acquisition. So I've seen these numbers floating about. At one point, one of the e-commerce companies had a 4,000 rupee cost per acquisition. Even now, many companies proudly say they've come below the 1,000 rupee cost per acquisition mark. Why does this not make sense? Look at it. The average basket size is about 800, 900 rupees. Your average margins are about 20%. That means you're making 180 rupees, right, on the gross level. But you're paying for freight, you're paying for everything else, so you're actually net probably making 120, 130 rupees after all of that stuff. And you're paying 1,000 rupees to acquire the customer. That basically means the customer has to come back to you 8 times for you to actually make money of that customer, and the remaining 7 times he's got to come back to you. He's got to come back without any advertising costs associated then. That means the customer has to really, and if you want that to, you know, that break even to happen in 2 years, the customer has to come back to you every 2-3 months on his own. And all we know is that absolutely no company in India has managed to make this happen. So this entire 1,000 rupee cost per acquisition mantra that many people talk about doesn't really make much sense. You have to figure out far different ways. So one of my friends who runs another large e-com company in India told me that his target cost per acquisition is 50 rupees. And that to me was refreshing, because you sit back and say, how the hell are you going to acquire somebody for $1, 50 rupees? But he says, otherwise it doesn't make sense. And I think that's probably the right kind of approach. Rather than saying, he's 2,000, I should be 1,000, you've got to sit back and say 1,000 itself doesn't make sense. Let's figure out where I need to be. Right? One of the things that we've kind of figured out is that for a business to win, it has to be somewhat unique to India. I think where we lucked out in the case of a company like Redbus or a company like My Dentist or a company like Carvalho, any of the companies that we've invested in, is there is no equivalent business anywhere else in the world that we could sit back and do a copy-paste from. So Redbus solved a set of unique problems to be able to sell bus tickets, intercity bus tickets online. It's grown from selling 2 tickets a day to 25, 30,000 tickets a day. And it's done so without any television commercials, any newspaper advertising of that sort. Right? It's a real middle India kind of business, selling intercity bus tickets for 500 to 800 rupees each. And to us, this kind of focus on segments which are unique to India, we've understood the problem and understood the solution is probably where a lot of the future lies. Right? The next issue is really this issue of exits. So it's going to be difficult for most of us to start companies unless we've got a big bunch of money with us, and that money can either come from an overseas partner if you're an Indian branch, or it's going to come from an investor such as us or somebody else. The big problem out here is really that after the Facebook IPO fiasco in the US, the entire enthusiasm for tech stocks has waned. In fact, when we sit here tomorrow, I'll be sitting with Keertika talking about how Facebook has raised its prices and cut its virality to improve its numbers and make sure there's no free ride. And it's become harder and harder for Indian companies to say, you know what, we won't go public in India because it's too demanding out here. Look at it. If you look at Pantaloons or look at Big Bazaar, it got sold at 0.5 times its sales. Right? Even in the US, we heard right now my prior speakers say that diapers.com got sold for 1.1 times its sales, and Zappos got sold for 0.9 times its revenue, or almost 1x its revenue. If the companies out here believing they're going to get a 10x multiple on the top line, that's simply not going to happen. Right? So it makes you wonder and see, how would a company be funded at a 4,000 crore valuation when it's got sales at the 1,000 crore number or the 2,000 crore number? It really makes you wonder how that's going to happen, because obviously if somebody's funded it at 4,000 crores, he expects to sell it at a 12,000 crore valuation, which means the company should hit 15,000 crores in revenues, right? It's hard for me to see an e-com company hitting 15,000 crores in revenues, given that, all of Big Bazaar, all of Pantaloons is 8,000 crores even today, right? So I think there's got to be some reality in terms of what the Indian stock market is going to take, what the Indian stock market is going to absorb. We're not going to behave like the US stock market, and I think that's one thing we've really learned. I think broadly again, going forward in India, a lot of the future will, already out of this 150 million users, about 90 million each come from desktop and come from mobile, and the rest is the overlap between the two. And the number that's really slated to grow is the mobile number, which my friends at Google and Airtel tell me should grow to about 200 million by next year. That means 200 million mobile internet users, about 150 million, 120 million desktop internet users, for a total of 300 million unduplicated ones, right? This basically means that if you were sitting and building this beautiful site in 960 pixels, it's not going to work, because you've got to make it work and, to really make use of the mobile platform. You have to figure out how to make it work. And one of the really less used methods that I've seen these days, I don't know why other companies don't use more of it, is the ability to use either a missed call or to use voice or to use a telephone to make a sale. Unlike the US, where the cost of handling a call is really high, it's probably in the order of $1 plus. The cost of handling a call here is in the order of 5 cents. Or 10 cents at the most, right? And that's perfectly fine. I mean, you can put together 5 rupees, 7 rupees as the cost of handling a call to be able to complete a sale. It's much less than 1,000 rupees it takes you to complete a sale online. So I would really urge people to look at the ability to use a telephone, to use voice, to use the mobile as potential keypads for future businesses that they launch out here. Right? One of the bigger factors, before I get on to kind of where is this all pointing to, that we need to figure out, and we've done a really bad job of. In fact, when I was sitting at Ashish and doing one of these planning sessions, I said, look, the one enormous issue we have here is that none of us in this room has bothered to go and lobby with the government. We have a Biani who can go and tell the government to shut down FDI while he's building Big Bazaar and open up FDI when he's ready to sell it, right? So we don't have anybody in this business, because there are Babus in North Block and South Block who are saying no e-commerce whatsoever in India, right? Even now, most companies that need to invest in India have to do through this backdoor warehousing and front office route, which is kind of within the letter of the law, but I believe not necessarily within the spirit of the law. So the government is not really bullish on e-com in India, which is kind of ridiculous, and that's because we haven't bothered to go and lobby them. The government is us. We need to go and speak to them. I don't think the IVC has done it. I don't think IAMA has done it. Nobody's really gone and bothered to tell the guys what needs to be done out here. Going forward, what do I believe are the interesting opportunities and areas? I do think, for example, that I'm personally more impressed by a company like Home Shop 18 that combines television and online than just a company like Flipkart, which is pure online. I don't necessarily see the logic of a pure online model in India when the costs are, it costs you. I used to run a television channel when I came to India. Today you can run a reasonable television channel for $1 million. 4-5 crores a year is what it costs you to run a TV channel, right? And that's less than most ad budgets. So if you're able to run a TV channel, get distribution to 120 million satellite homes, get even 1% of them to see it, you have the ability to reach that customer 24 hours a day with credible voices and people on there trying to sell you stuff. So some interesting hybrid of this home shopping model and the online shopping model, I think might be something that can work out. I do think that, for example, a really nice tech channel could be Chroma, selling online. A really nice travel channel could be Cox & Kings or Thomas Cook, selling online. I do think we have to look in directions such as this to be able to break the barriers that have come in our way. I also do believe, like I said, that voice plus mobile is going to be more powerful than the computer keyboard. I see this more and more where one of my investee companies runs an SMS service. We get 2 to 3 million SMSs a day, where customers have no problem paying us ₹1 an SMS to be able to get information. And if you're able to do a deal with an SMS provider to be able to allow commerce to happen via SMS or via voice, I think there's a huge opportunity out there. There's also a big break out there that the fee for selling on the internet via Visa or MasterCard is only 2%, while the fee for selling on mobile via carrier is 80% because a mobile carrier takes 80% of the revenues. But if you can figure out and you can work with the smaller carriers and break through and get a better revenue share than 80-20 or 82-18 or whatever it is on offer today, I think you can make this mobile thing work if you do it in a smart way. The other kind of prevailing fiction is that I sense is this entire bottom of the pyramid thing. I don't think we are ready yet to get commerce to happen from the bottom of the pyramid. I still think the top of the pyramid and the middle of the pyramid is really where we need to be for the next 2, 3, 4 years. There's huge amounts. That's 300, 400, 500 million people. That's 20% more than the population of the US. So there's a huge amount of business to be had from the top and the middle of the pyramid before we need to worry necessarily about the bottom of the pyramid. Again, there's only 400 million people in there who get to watch television. So let's not worry necessarily about the other 800, 900 million people, right, that we keep talking about. When I talk about this, people come back and say, but let's really talk about distribution reach. So one of the really interesting experiments is something what my friend Vedishwaran, who runs IndiaPlaza.com, I don't know if he's here at this conference, told me one day was one of India's largest, an American FMCG company, told him, I really don't believe in this entire reach of the internet in India. My distribution reach is superb. So why don't we run a test which shows me what percentage of my distribution reach you can reach through online. So they ran a test and they figured out that at the end of the test that this large FMCG company's reach was less than 40% of the reach of the online store. Right? Which basically means, I'll name it, P&G in India only reached 40% of the places it had distribution outlets compared to the compared to an index of 100%, 2.5 times as many distribution places were reached by the online store compared to an offline store. So there's a huge amount of arrogance among large FMCG companies saying we have incredible distribution in India. It's not true at all. I think we know now that I've seen logistics services delivered to 20, 25, 30,000 zip codes in India, which is far more zip codes than most companies have distribution outlets in. So this entire story of online is necessarily going to be subservient to offline is not necessarily going to be true. There's a different kind of entrepreneurship that I've seen happening. I was chatting with this guy called Chris Gillibo, who's written a really interesting book about individuals who are running businesses. There's a guy in Hyderabad who sits and teaches people how to use Microsoft Excel. He does it online. He gets paid on PayPal, and he makes $150,000 a year. Individually, that's 70 lakhs a year sitting at home. There's several companies. I was on the board of a company that worked out of Janakpuri, 4 guys who'd never been outside India. They sold a software product. They sold it in 96 countries. They never had a passport. They'd never been outside India. And simply, they basically offered a product, sold it online. I think there's going to be lots of room for such micro-entrepreneurship. These are not fundable companies, but these are great companies that you can live a very, very satisfying lifestyle from. You can get a lot of money, a lot of cash, and run it like a proper business. You don't necessarily need funding and inputs and exits for businesses such as these. One more thing I keep talking about is the ability to leapfrog. While in the US, you saw that if you take the book industry, you went from a corner store to the Main Street store to a department store to kind of a super store, and then you went to a big box store like a Walmart, and then you went online. today in India, what you probably have is you have corner stores, and we've come into huge issues with this entire department store and main street stores because real estate is phenomenally expensive in India. I do believe online or digital or e-com gives you the ability to leapfrog and not necessarily go there at all. Why do we need a big box? Why do we need a main street store? Why do we need large department store? You can go directly from corner store to online, right? And we have the ability to do that. Much like in the US, you went from, you had landlines, and landlines went from 0% to 100% coverage, and then your mobile phone started, and you went 1G, then 2G, then 3G, now 4G's come. And in India, we had landlines. They went from 0 to 5%, and then mobile phones went from 0 to 70%, and then forget 1G, 2G went to 30%, and then 3G has already gone to 14%, and 4G is already up there. So we have the ability to leapfrog generations. We will not necessarily follow every generation that the US has followed in that particular order it has followed. There's a huge ability to leapfrog that we're going to see out there. At the same time, I'm going to see opportunities in what I call the D by DX. If e-commerce is basically the function, then the derivative of the function is all the support functions. The people who run conferences such as this, the people who do couponing, the people who do logistics, the people who run marketing companies, the people who run portals, the people who run guidebooks. Much like the equivalent of the people who sold shovels during the gold rush. They didn't really, it's a steady living that you make. Few people find gold, but everybody who sells shovels makes a fair living. So there's still some significant business left in that tools category that enable other people to run e-commerce businesses successfully. I think that's one thing that we haven't spent a lot of time on. Increasingly, we are seeing the rise of businesses that we call through the line, not necessarily offline or online, but through the line. One of our investments is in a chain of dental clinics called My Dentist. You've probably seen them all over Bombay. There are about 40 odd of them, already India's largest chain. There's an incredible online backbone to all of that makes them work well. And eventually, all customers will be online and so on and so forth. Yes, you have to go to a clinic that's in your neighborhood. It's a little difficult to deliver dental service over the net, right? But the ability to make power that, so we're able to break even a clinic in 4 months. We're able to figure out where to start a clinic. We're able to see where the demand is because we use an enormous amount of technology behind the line. So this is what we call a through-the-line business, a business supported by the strength of e-com, even though the front end is not necessarily on e-com. Broadly, if you were to ask me, I know I'm running out of time, my own sense is that we see a greater potential in consumer businesses than B2B businesses online, because it's easier for us, we believe, to build consumer brands online than necessarily build B2B brands in this particular new world that we're talking about, right? I think there's room for lots of businesses. I don't know, I can't exactly tell you what business out there. What I can tell you broadly is one of the big beliefs we have is that unlike, again, the 20th century, where if you take in any particular commerce, a regular offline commerce business, you'd have maybe a Best Buy take 20% of the market share in electronics, and then somebody else takes up 15% market share, and somebody gets 12% market share. Number 4 company gets 10% market share. And the same is the story in cars. Toyota has a 21% market share, Volkswagen has a 20% market share, GM has 18%, and so on and so forth. So the market shares kind of decline gradually. So you can even run a profitable number 10 company in pharma, right? In the online world, that's somehow not the case. In the case of 21st century businesses, the number 1 seems to take a 75-85% market share. Number 2 gets a 7%, 8% market share. Number 3 gets a 1% market share, right? Look at it. In search, there's Google and there's nobody else. In social networking, there's Facebook and nobody else. In auctions, there's eBay and nobody else. And you follow it all the way down. In microblogging, there's Twitter and nobody else. So more and more of this business, and we've seen that in bus ticketing, we know there's Redbus and nobody else. And in car sales online, we know there's Carvali and nobody else. It's becoming more and more of a winner-take-all game. The guy who goes in first or who goes in best has the ability to go and get a commanding and incredible dominance in that market. It's not about the 20% market. So the risk of being number 2 is not a 2% market share risk. It's a 70% market share risk, right? So, which basically means if there's already somebody out there in the field that has an established leader, we tell people avoid that. Go build your own niche. There's enough niches to win there in India. So a lot of our own belief is around the fact that go find an unexplored part of the market, become the absolute dominant leader out there, right? Be the trend setter and be that category owner, or that sector owner, rather than try to be the follower in yet another category. And that's a lot of what we believe in, that India has the ability and enormous number of white spaces for large dominant companies to come up in these white spaces and win their part of the market. largely, if you would ask for technology platforms, I mean, unlike the US, we really don't have that much of, variety. It's going to be an HTML5 Android country. I mean, iOS is a very, very tiny, small player in India. If you look at all the numbers, so it's on the front. I mean, a lot of companies build stuff on HTML5 because it can go from browser to tablet to phone in the simplest possible way. And Android is pretty much winning the mobile and the tablet ecosystem race, with an enormous commanding market share already out there in India. Yes, there are challenges. I mean, a friend of mine runs a baby store in India, and he sells 2.5 crores worth of diapers a month already in India. 30 crores of diapers a year. That's a significant amount of business. But what holds them back is the fact that the RBI hasn't allowed subscription sales to happen. You can't pay, you can't swipe a credit card once and say, bill me 500 rupees every month. We're not allowed to do that. Every single time you have to deliberately swipe the card again and again, right? So we still do have issues that hold us back. I do think that subscription sales for things like magazines, diapers, grocery is one additional convenience that you've got to figure out a hack around. But I think with the ability for people to hack through, find a hack, and for us to be able to, in some way, go lobby the powers that be to be able to allow stuff like that to happen, there is some interesting future out there. Broadly, if I was to sum this all up, I would say that I'm bullish on this sector. I'm bullish on the ability of our entrepreneurs to be able to do well out here. What I believe that will work is, in this business, is not a copy-paste, is not Control-C, Control-V. It's not, reading TechCrunch and seeing who launched what in the US and figuring out what to launch in India. It's really saying, forget all that. This is almost a different planet, like China is a different planet. Figure out what needs to work out here, what is the problem out here, what is the solution out here, and figure out a unique solution out here that makes it work. I think I've come to the end of my time. My name is Mahesh. You can reach me at mahesh@seedfund.in. I'm also Mahesh Murthy on Twitter, and I'm at 98922499969 if you're awake and if you're taking that down. Thanks. I hope this was interesting. Yeah. So there's been anybody with questions? 1 second. Can we have a show of hands of people who are awake enough to want to ask questions? Anybody? So there's one hand up there. There's a lady, you're number 2. There's a gentleman, number 3. Anybody else? Gentleman, number 4. Yeah, sir.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Sushant from Belakorwala Technologies. We have a website by the name of beyondtime.in, which we just launched recently.
Oh, what's your website, sorry?
Beyondtime.in.
Beyondtime.in. It's a watch website.
No, it's to do with all electronics, consumer electronics.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. So one quick question, which you were talking about, how long do you last vis-a-vis the biggies, right? We will, at this point of time, we are, we are funding ourselves from internal resources. How long does one go in, and how does one survive without, trying to fight the big guys? Like you said, there's 1 month there will be a Jabong will come and say 4,000 customer acquisition costs and give you free offers. There'll be tomorrow or somebody else. So how does one keep their cool, going through this process? If you can guide and give us some inputs on that front.
If I could use an analogy, there's a war going on. Just dig a bunker, keep your head below ground, make sure you don't get shot. Let those big guys kill each other.
Right, but
when the battlefield is full of bodies, stand up and then start walking out.
Right.
Till then, make sure you survive.
Yeah, but it's still difficult, right? To keep going on, funding yourself, fighting the big guys.
Life
right?
isn't easy, yeah.
Yeah, sure, I understand, but still some kind of inputs on that front, if you could.
I don't know. I mean, I don't have any magic, wand to swipe at you. All I can figure out is customers, nobody buys cheapest. I really want to keep coming back and saying that. It's only when you have a commodity product that people go for the lowest price. But if you can figure out something differentiable in your offer, people buy the best they can afford. I mean, you bought the best watch, you bought the best pen you could afford, you bought the best shirt you can afford. If you really go with that faith, you figure out what it is that you can do that people will pay you more for and continue paying you more for. And that increased revenue that you get, that is your funding. Far and away, the best funding out there in business is that from customer revenue. It's not venture capital funding. We all know that, right? So we guys, VCs, we're only the second best way to fund companies. I mean, customer revenues are far and away the best way to fund companies. You have to figure out what it is a customer will pay more for. whether it's, you'll have to figure out. So I do know, for example, I'll give you an example. Even though Amazon sells the books in India, there's a guy who comes from a company and sells books, business books. He comes on a door-to-door basis to sell business books. The sheer convenience of a guy coming and laying out the books in front of a company. I don't know if there are too many guys elsewhere in the world who sell books to businesses on a door-to-door basis. These guys do that, and they manage it, and they sell it at a premium. They tell you very clearly that's what we're paying a premium. So you don't mind the 200, 300, 400 rupee premium that you're paying, because the guy is coming to your office, he picks up the phone, he delivers a book. You have to figure out what will keep you alive till the big guys in some ways kill themselves. And not just alive, but growing slowly.
Okay. So if I can just share something with you quickly, right? What we're doing on our site is, one, we're trying to do within Bombay, right? Our focus is pure Bombay. We don't want to really venture out too much. We get anything from outside is fine. Because I believe Bombay market by itself is pretty huge enough to...
Yeah, Bombay has more population than Australia. I mean, right. We all know that.
So that's one. Two is what we're looking at, a 3 to 4 hour delivery within Bombay for our products, right? Which is give the customer delight and we get back. Like you correctly said, we are looking at, that will cost me $50 per delivery, but that's my acquisition cost, that's my customer delight, who will inform 10 other people. That's one. Two is also what we are looking at is we do value adds, right? Like we do a data transfer. When you buy a mobile phone from us, my person goes with the machine, does the data transfer from the old phone to the new phone. But at the same time, while we're doing all these value adds to stand out from the crowd, what people don't really see still is saying, "Ke boss, price Flipkart pe ye hai, aapka kya price hai?" And we need to kind of keep matching Flipkart's price. So today we are priced better than Flipkart. So how does one, still keep continuing?
So maybe your way is how you figure out how you present your pricing. You say, yeah, my actual pricing for the product matches Flipkart's pricing,
right.
But I'm going to give you this other service. This service is called, taking your data from your old phone to your new phone,
right.
And the service is worth 350 rupees. You want it, you don't want it, that's fine. I have this other service, and I have this other service, and this other service. Don't give stuff away free. Don't spoil the customer. Everybody else has spoiled the customer by giving them stuff for free. Don't give it away for free. You see it as a value add, the customer sees it as a value subtract, as a price subtract. Right? The customer sees it as a discount. Why should he not charge? Don't be ashamed to charge. Please charge money. Right? And tell people the value you're giving and charge them for the value you're giving. Yeah, and then you can say, I'm 50 rupees cheaper than Flipkart actually, on the product itself.
Right.
I think, brick and mortar stores have figured out, one of my other beliefs, and I'm sorry to move away for a minute, is a lot of business around the world will kind of go into this entire idea of, you will have experience centers where you'll go and see this TV and there'll be somebody who explains the television set to you and somebody explains the phone to you, but you're not going to buy it there, you're going to buy it online.
Right.
So these stores will start up where they will charge a rental for you to put the product up and explain the product to you. Right. So essentially, I think the world will kind of move to the point where you're not going to get rid of offline to sell online. Offline will be used for product experience and online will be used maybe for shopping, and you can figure out some way to do both. Right? There's money to be made on both sides.
Sure.
Yeah, but it's hard to explain, hard to expect a product experience online and hard to expect the best prices on ground.
Sure.
So do what's good in whichever medium. I hope that helps in some way.
Yeah.
Great, great. Can we move on to the next question?
There was a lady there, ma'am.
Right over.
It's a conspiracy. You've been silenced.
Thanks. This is Alpana. I wanted to understand from you, what are those niche areas that you are trying to point out, which will, where there is a lot of potential rather than...
If I knew, I would start businesses there already. Huh?
Yeah. So basically, I would like to understand what is that you are focusing on.
I don't so much start companies as much as back people who start businesses, right? So, so we've seen businesses. I mean, I've seen an interesting business which delivers food all night long in Bombay, even though the restaurant shut down at midnight. I think there's some value to it. I've seen a business that delivers condoms at 3 in the morning. I understand that there is apparently a market need for that in Bombay, right? So again, I don't mean to be facetious, but I would imagine that. Let's say there's so many newborn babies in Bombay. I think there's a business involved in figuring out how to get packages of goodies to them and how to make sure that their parents, start experiencing the best diapers, the best bottles, the best baby care, and so on and so forth. It's not done yet. We don't really have a good baby mothers community in India. The biggest community out there is Baby Center, which is run by Johnson & Johnson, which is a private company.
Yeah,
I think I don't know. I mean, there's a billion opportunities. I'd probably don't know all billion of them. or any of the billion of them. But something will come out from your experience, from your expertise, from your in-depth examination somewhere, and there will be a billion such white spaces. I didn't think too much of the intercity bus ticketing segment 6 years ago when I invested in a company.
True.
Today it's almost 1,000 crores in revenues, right? Just that one company. You know, we just simply have to figure out.
That's essentially about the format you're talking about. I mean, not exactly the sector-wise here.
Well, bus ticketing is a sector, right? It did not exist. Bus ticketing largely, I would believe, did not, online bus ticketing did not really exist before a red bus, right? Dental clinic chain maybe did not exist before My Dentist, and maybe car portals selling cars did not exist before a car wale. I think it's perfectly fine to be the first. I think what I'm maybe warning you against is being the second or the third or the fourth. It's very risky to be the third or the fourth. While traditional Indian thinking is it's very safe to be the third or the fourth. You know, I would say it's very risky to be the third or the fourth, be the first or the second. So I don't know, ma'am. I mean, if I knew the sectors really, I'd be funding businesses in those already.
Okay, can we go on to our next question? Please, right beside you, maybe you can pass, or sorry.
There was a gentleman there in the striped t-shirt. He was number 3, ma'am. Behind out there. Ma'am, could you please pass the microphone out to the gentleman there?
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Arun. I just missed your mobile number. Is you ready? It's too fast.
98922 49969. Yeah, there was a gentleman there. It was number 4. The number 4 was here somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, it was this gentleman. Sorry, it was just hold. I'll come to you, sir. It was this gentleman.
I was just curious, when you said the bottom of the pyramid is not necessarily as hot as some analysts make it out to be, to what degree, I wanted to know, to what degree do you think it's not so hot because there are not enough even basic mobile phones out there?
So I really don't even think the mobile phones have necessarily reached through the bottom of the pyramid, right? We have 900 million mobile phone users, mobile phone SIM cards out there, but only 575 million users. So there's still 800 million people in India or 700 million people who don't have mobile phones. The rest of it is people who have, you know, used a SIM and thrown it, or who have 2 mobile phones and so on and so forth. So I still think that where the mobile phones are, that's an accessible market. That's also a market that is that's already paying 100 rupee ARPU or 200 rupee ARPU to the mobile phone company. I'm not saying that there's no money at the bottom of the pyramid. There will be, you know, but I don't see it. Maybe I'm unable to see it, but I'm seeing huge amounts of money right there in the top in the middle of the pyramid right now. At some point there will be, maybe 3 years from now, 1 year from now, 5 years from now. I'm not able to see it yet.
And briefly, at what level of the pyramid would you say do those people belong who